Hi, this is Brett from SRmoto, and this is our 2008 Ducati Hypermotard 1100S. And today I wanted to do a video, talk a little bit about this bike, kind of run down the factory specs on it real quick, and then talk a little bit about some of the modifications we've done to it over the years. I've had this bike for roughly 5 or 6 years now. I think when I bought it, it had about 1,500 miles on it, and I think I'm right about 4,500 miles on it now. So I don't ride it a lot. I mean, it's one of those bikes where, you know, I probably get it out once or twice a month, and I do mostly short rides on it. If you're not familiar with these bikes, or if you've never ridden one of them before, the Hypermotard name is definitely kind of fitting for these bikes. Definitely not a beginner bike. It's kind of an intimidating bike to ride, especially at first if you're not used to it. It's got a lot of engine braking, very aggressive engine braking. You know, if you're out riding and not really paying attention and you chop the throttle, it's like you're, you know, throwing on the brakes. So you really got to focus on riding it smoothly and sort of just pay attention to that. It's also got kind of a aggressive on-off throttle as well. The brakes are really good, you know, super high quality Brembos, but they're also pretty aggressive brakes, and there's no ABS or anything like that to bail you out if you screw up. So you got to kind of be careful with the brakes too. Riding position on it takes some getting used to as well. You know, I'm used to supermotos. I ride a lot of supermotos, and this is sort of billed as a supermoto, but it's not really, in my opinion, at least ergonomics wise, it feels quite a bit different than what I'm used to as far as a supermoto goes. When you're sitting on it, it sort of feels like you're sitting up above the bike and sort of looking down on it. It just takes some getting used to. Once you ride it for a while, it starts to feel normal, but it's one of those bikes where if I haven't ridden it in a while and I go out on it, it feels very sort of unusual at first, and it just takes me a while to get used to riding it. Definitely an acquired taste. From a look standpoint, you know, I think it's arguably one of the better looking Ducatis that they've made, at least in my opinion. I mean, I've always loved the look of these Hypermotards, and I really like the look of the new Hypermotard 950s. They look, you know, very similar to this bike. Ducati definitely, you know, took cues from this bike when they designed that new 950. You know, the trellis frame, single-sided swing arm, all that stuff, all the carbon fiber. It's just a beautiful bike. But like I said, definitely an acquired taste. If you get a chance to ride one, though, definitely it's an experience is kind of the best way to put it. It's not just a bike to just go cruise around on it. You really sort of have to focus and pay attention to what you're doing. So let me go through the specs on it real quick. As far as the engine goes, air and oil cooled, 1078cc, twin spark, 2-valve V-twin. A lot of people call it an L-twin. It's basically the same engine as the Ducati Multistrada 1100 from that same year, but the Hyper had the dry clutch on it. The Multistrada did not. I think it's about 90 to 95 horsepower from the factory, if I remember correctly. I had this one dynoed a couple years ago, and we were at about, I think, around 105 horsepower. I don't have the dyno chart in front of me. This bike has a few things done to it, so it was about 105 horsepower. It's a pretty quick bike. I mean, it's not a really fast bike, but you know, for the size of the bike, it's got plenty of power. As far as suspension goes, this is the 1100S, so it had better suspension on it than the base Hypermotard 1100. It's got fully adjustable suspension front and rear. It's got Öhlins rear shock, and then in the front, it's got these real beefy 50 millimeter Marzocchi front forks, and these have that diamond-like carbon coating on the sliders, that DLC coating. So real high quality suspension on the S model, fully adjustable. On the firm side, for sure, the roads around here are kind of rough, and this bike, you know, it's kind of has kind of a sport bike feel to it as far as the way it rides. Definitely does not ride like my DRZ 400 SM does, you know, from a suspension standpoint. I think it's 6.5 inches of travel in the front and like 5.5 in the rear. Wheels. The S model has the forged aluminum Marchesini wheels, so it's got the real lightweight forged aluminum wheels front and rear. I think the base model Hyper had cast aluminum wheels, so a little bit heavier. Brakes, as I mentioned, the brakes are really good brakes, but also very aggressive brakes. Brembos, I think it's very similar brakes to the 1098 Superbike from that same generation. The Superbike had a little bit bigger front rotors on it. These are 305 millimeter dual discs in the front, and again, no ABS, so you just gotta kind of watch yourself on the brakes. They've got the initial bite is pretty aggressive. They do have braided stainless steel brake lines and stuff, so the feel that you get from the brake lever and the brake pedal is really good. You just kind of got to watch yourself. No ABS to bail you out with these brakes. Let's see, what else? The S model came with a lot of carbon fiber on it. Carbon fiber tank cover, carbon fiber muffler guards that have the Hyper 1100S logo on them. Carbon fiber belt covers and carbon fiber front fender. I mentioned the trellis frame and single-sided swing arm. So I think that's about it on the factory spec. So let me kind of talk about what we've done to it. We haven't done a lot to it. You don't really need to do a lot to these bikes. Let me start performance-wise. When I got the bike, it already had the Terminioni carbon fiber dual slip-ons, and the rest of the exhaust is stock. And it's got a Ducati race ECU, red anodized clutch pressure plate, stainless steel springs, and then the red anodized spring caps. I think it's Ducati Performance on that stuff. And then we did a BMC air filter at the last service. And like I mentioned, it's about 105 horsepower, I think is what it dynoed at. And I'll put a clip at the end of this video. There will be a link at the end of this video so you can hear what this exhaust sounds like. I did a separate video that kind of demos the sound of the exhaust. It's got a really good aggressive sound to it for sure. Hand guards. Now these bikes came from the factory with these special hand guards that had the mirrors attached to the outer edge and they folded out. This bike did not have those when I got it. I'm not sure what happened to those, but at some point those mirrors disappeared. So when I got this bike, it had the Ducati Performance handguards on it, which were made by Acerbis, and then it had mirrors on it that had the turn signals in the mirrors. I got rid of all that stuff. I didn't really like the way it looked. So we put our Zeta Pro Armor handguards on it. With the plastic protectors that screw to the front, and then I had these Ducati graphics made that fit right on those plastic protectors. I think it looks really good. It matches up the red on the bike. And then the turn signals are actually integrated into the handguards, one of the features of the Zeta Pro Armor handguards. And you'll have to excuse that hyper flashing on the turn signals. I'm still kind of trying to resolve that. When we put the LEDs on this bike, front and rear, it started hyper flashing like typical. So that's what we did in the front, you know, for the lighting and also for the handguards. And then in the rear, we replaced that big piece that hangs off the back with a Evotech Performance fender eliminator kit. It's still got the stock brake light and everything. License plate mount and everything is Evotech Performance. And then bolted up to the side of that, we've got these Moto Gadget M-Blaze LED turn signals, which are these real tiny turn signals that are super bright. So that's what we did for the lights on the bike. Now it's got a Ducati Performance seat with that kind of carbon fiber weave to the vinyl. Looks really cool. Not a huge fan of the seat itself. I mean, it's comfortable. It's a little bit on the slippery side. Been debating on getting some other type of cover or something for it. Let's see, what else? SRmoto mirrors. We sell these SRmoto mirror package that you get basically a pair of these mirrors, and we use them on all of our SRmotos. Typically, they mount up and hang down underneath the handlebars, but on this bike, you cannot mount them that way because they'll hit the side of the gas tank. So I just mounted them up above the handguards or above the handlebars, and they work really well. And they look really cool because you can hardly see them. So that's our SRmoto mirrors. I mentioned the aggressive on-off throttle earlier. We installed a G2 Tamer throttle tube, which is a special aluminum throttle tube that gives you a little bit better throttle control. It helped a little bit, but I think, you know, it's mostly a kind of a fuel injection thing, I believe, that causes all of that aggressive throttle. We replaced the stock battery with an anti-gravity AT12-BS lithium battery, which is a lot lighter than that stock battery. I think we saved 6-7 pounds with that. I got rid of the stock passenger foot pegs, that big piece that's mounted to both sides of the frame that has the passenger foot pegs. So I replaced that with these Moto Composites carbon fiber heel guards that bolt right up to the stock mounting points for those passenger foot pegs. I think these look really, really good. Clutch cover, did the Ducati Type 7 clutch cover. They've got a bunch of different clutch covers that they make for these Ducatis. This is the Type 7. I think it looks really sharp with that clear window in the front. And again, I think I mentioned I did a video of the exhaust that you can watch. I linked it at the end of this video. I also kind of demoed the dry clutch so you can see what that looks like as well. What else? Chain, EK chain in red. And I think we've got the stock gearing on the bike. Tires. Pirelli Diablo Rosso Corsa 2s, front and rear, stock sizes, 180 55/17 rear, and a 120 70 by 17 front. And that's about it. Like I said, we didn't really do a lot to it. On the 1100S, you don't really need to do a lot to it. It comes pretty well equipped from the factory. If I had a 796 or the base 1100, there's a lot more things you can do, but on the S model, you just don't need to do a lot to it. So I think that's about it for now. If you have any questions about the bike, leave a comment down below. I try to check those comments periodically. If you liked the video, found it helpful, definitely give us a like. If you want to see more videos, SRmoto related, dual sport related, we do a bunch of project bikes here at the shop, and we try to do project bike updates, product reviews, stuff like that. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of that kind of stuff. And I think that's about it for now. Again, it's Brett from SRmoto and our 2008 Ducati 1100S Hypermotard. Thanks for watching.